Okay, Mr. Glenn here, ACT Prep Chicago. We help students prepare for the ACT and SAT standardized test. Um, our contact information is actprepchicago@yahoo.com, and our phone number is 773-474-2540. And we help students via one-on-one tutoring. And so, but this video is about it provides answer explanations for the PACT October 2025 exam that a lot of students took at this school exam. And so let's jump right in. I'll provide the contact information so that if you were interested in getting more detailed instruction with ACT or SAT, you can reach out to us that way. This is part two of the video. In part one, we went through 1 through 30. We're going to do the last passage now, and then we're going to, that's just three passages for this section. Okay, passage three, a taste for sassafras. I think I'm saying that right. Sassafras trees are fairly common where I spent my childhood years growing up. This just seems very wordy. This test prefers short, and I could just say where I grew up. Fairly, sassafras are fairly common where I grew up. And it says in a small town near Akron, Ohio. Um, I don't need to say childhood years growing up. Growing up means childhood years, right? Lived during the youthful years of my youthful childhood, that's redundant. Lived as a child, I'm looking at Tracy while growing up, same thing. I don't need to say child growing up at the same time. I just say I grew up. D, and this test prefers short. So the answer to this one is D. The other choices are redundant, which means needlessly repetitive. You don't need to repeat the information. You can say it. They're trying to encourage students not to pad. You know, when you get an essay and you have to write, they say you gotta have so many pages, and students just start unnecessarily repeating information. They want to stop that. All right, there's a stand of the trees along the edge of our backyard, and they can be found in the parks and empty lots around our neighborhood. My grandmother used to have us dig up pieces of sassafras roots so she could make the scented tea that we liked so much. Two underline in one sentence. That could be tricky sometimes. Let's try the first one. Which of the following would not be acceptable? So that means this one works fine. So we're looking for one that won't work. My grandmother used to have us dig up pieces of sassafras root in order that she, no, it would be in order to. So that's F is not right. You could read that, probably F, but I'm just going to try the other ones. My grandmother used to have us dig up pieces of sassafras roots with which she could make, yes, she could make scented tea with these roots. That works. So that she could make, yeah, that works. My grandmother used to have us dig up pieces of sassafras roots so that she could make the scented tea. Right. She picked up roots so that she could make tea, yes. J, what about J? My grandmother used to have us dig up pieces of sassafras roots that she could make the scented tea that we liked so much. It would definitely be J is wrong. F sounds wrong, but J is definitely wrong. My grandmother used to have us dig up pieces of sassafras roots, and these roots, then it say, my grandmother used to have us dig up pieces of sassafras roots that she could make the scented tea that we like so much. It should be so that. Why? You need that. Or you say so she, you need some kind of in order. So with which, so that. You can't just say that. There's no cause and effect relationship. My grandmother did this. Why? For what reason? So you need the cause and effect kind of relationship. You won't say just the that by itself. My grandmother used to have us dig up pieces of sassafras roots that she could make the scented tea that we like so much. Yeah, you need that. So J is incorrect. And then 33, which choice would most clearly emphasize that the narrator's memory of the tea is a positive one? Scented tea doesn't indicate positive, it just tells us that she could smell it. Aromatic is that's a nice smell. So scented means we could smell it. We don't know if it was nice or not. We usually people associate scented with nice smell, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Aromatic does. Aromatic means a nice aroma or smell. Odorous means stinky, just like pungent. Pungent and odorous means smell bad. So it's not those, because that would not be positive. Keyword positive. So it's B. Which choice provides the best transition from the preceding paragraph to this paragraph and to this sentence? Which choice provides the best transition from the preceding paragraph to this paragraph and to this sentence? So what was the previous paragraphs about? The sassafras trees, where they grew up, where the stands of trees along her backyard, and where else you could find them, and how her grandmother used to have them pick it so she could make tea. That's the next part. I'm not going to read the transition. I acquired a taste for the leaves of the sassafras, but why would she acquire a taste? Because she was drinking the grandmother teas, which she liked. So, best transition from the preceding paragraph to this one, as often happens in such cases, despite all that had transpired, on top of everything else, no. They said we liked so much. At some point, I acquired a taste for the leaves of the sassafras, as often happens in such cases. I don't know about this, as often happens in such cases. I don't know if that transitions well. I don't know if we can assume that because you liked the tea as a kid so much, you acquired a taste for the leaves. I guess you could. It wouldn't be despite all that had transpired. No, it wouldn't be despite, because the last sentence said they liked the tea so much, and the second part said I acquired a taste for the leaves of the sarsaparilla. They liked it. The grandmother used to make the tea when they were kids. They liked it. They acquired a taste for it. Despite is you're not doing despite. It's not on top of everything else. Um, it's just like a continuation, right? It would be at some point I acquired a taste for the leaves of the sarsaparilla. But if you liked it, why would it say at some point you acquired a taste? I don't get that. As often happens in such cases. Oh, that would be right. It would be B. I acquired a taste for the leaves because they liked it as a kid, so then they acquired a taste for it. It would be at some point. Let's make sure though. That was what's wrong with that one. That was uh, whoops, I forgot to look what number that was. Whoops. 34A. 34 is A. All right, so I got that one wrong initially. At some point, I don't because it says I acquired a taste for the leaves. I at some point I acquired a taste for the leaves. It's almost like when you say it like that, it's like saying that you didn't like it initially. Because you acquired, usually when you say you acquire a taste for something, your initial taste wasn't that great, but over time you start to like it as you have more of it. But she says when they were kids, they liked it. They liked tea. So you didn't have to acquire a taste for something you initially liked. Anyway, they're saying it's F. All right. It is large, sometimes oblong, sometimes shaped like a mitten, sometimes shaped into three lobes, and they are soft, almost velvety soft. I could say it's definitely B because they refer to them later, and the they they're referring to is the leaves, right? I acquire a taste for the leaves of the sarsaparilla. They are large, sometimes oblong. They describe the leaves, sometimes shaped like a mitten. They're describing these leaves, right? So it should be they are, wouldn't be it's, right? Um, and then it goes to say, and they are soft, almost velvety, so they are described later. So you could get it from that context clues as well. Because they mentioned the leaves later in the sentence with the pronoun they. So they should have said use they in the beginning as well. I think it was the, so the answer is B. I think it was the tenderness of belief that made it seem edible to me, dash. But being a curious kid, it's almost like colon there. But being a curious kid, I sampled a lot of plants in sassafras. I think it was a tenderness of belief that made it seem edible to me. Sassafras leaves aren't sweet, but neither are they bitter like most leaves. Okay, so it's definitely F because G, H, and J all offer a period there, but remember for a period, the left and the right side would have to be a period. And if you look at G, as with most leaves is not a sentence. As are most leaves is not a sentence. Like most leaves is not a sentence. So G, H, and J put a period there. And most of the times they would trick people because most students only focus on the left side of the period. But to the right side, up to the next period should also be a sentence. And G, H, and J on the right side of the period are not sentences. So it couldn't be G, H, or J, it has to be F. I came to enjoy the tenderness of the leaves and their mild flavor. Whenever I felt like it while playing outside, I plucked a leaf and nibbled on it for a snack. My buddies made fun of this habit of mine. None of them would even try a leaf. Given that all the choices are true, which one would be most relevant to the writer's purpose here for revealing the young narrator's personality? None of them would even try a leaf, even though oil of sassafras was once a key ingredient in root beer. I don't think that was her personality. So I teased them back for their reluctance. So we returned to our game and kicked the can. Which one? This shows her personality, right? Because she's teasing them. That's a revelation of personality. She's teasing. So it's B, choice B. It says revealing the young narrator's personality. Recently, I read a magazine article about sassafras that placed my habit from the early days, sorry, from the elderly days, what it says, in a new light. Here, this is habit of days gone by, age encrusted habit. This is testing redundancies as well. The short choice says the same thing, old habit. All of these are trying to say old habit or old habit. We could just say it with J, old habit. Recently I made a magazine article about sassafras that places my old habit in a new light. Simply put, less wordy, that's what this test prefers. 38 is J. It turns out that the filet powder, an essential spice, and thickening ingredient in the delicious gumbo soups of Louisiana Creole cooking seems like this is a fragment. I'm trying to read. Let me read this again. It turns out that filet powder, an essential spice and thickening ingredient in the delicious gumbo soups of, that's a fragment. It turns out that filet powder, at this point, the writer is considering adding the following clause, which also features over other. Oh, am I reading this incorrectly? It turns out that filet powder. Oh, it finishes here. I'm about to say, okay, I finished that. I'm like, well, that's a fragment. Okay, it turns out that filet powder, and oh, I see, that's a long side note. It's good, and that's a description about filet powder. An essential spice and thickening ingredient in the delicious gumbo soups of Louisiana Creole cooking. That's a long side note. So it should be a comma after powder and a comma after cooking, which would be choice C. Do you guys see that? It's the side note. Now I should pause. Again, because that's a side note description of the filet powder. It tells us what it is. It's an essential spice and thickening ingredient in delicious gumbo's soups of Louisiana Creole cooking. And the sentence finishes. So if I were to do a sentence just to show you, you can cut this out as the side note, and the sentence will read, it turns out that filet powder is simply dried and ground sassafras leaves. Um, and that probably helps us with that choice too, with 41. If you take that out, it turns out that filet powder simply consists of dried and ground sassafras leaves. I think you can say it without simply. I mean, you can say it without consist. Because if you say it turns out that filet powder is simply, it's just that. Simply consists of, I think it's redundant, right? You could just say you could say simply consists of, but you could say it with less words and it still has the same effect. It turns out the filet powder is simply dry. C and D would be improper subject verb agreement, right? Um, I'll get rid of this so I can scroll down. All right, C and D, improper subject verb agreement, were and are, because we're talking about filet powder. You saw when I put the when I took out the side note, right? So I'll take this out, take that out, take that out. So that's a side note. It turns out that filet powder, it should be is. That's one thing. We wouldn't say filet powder were or are. So that's subject verb agreement as well. Were and are verbs that match plural subjects. Filet powder is one thing that's singular. So 41 would violate subject verb agreement. The answer choice is A. In addition, I learned that the Creole cooks who blended French, Spanish, and African American traditions got the idea for using sassafras from the native peoples of the southeastern United States. They have long used the powdered leaves not only for cooking, but also this is a problem. We're using a comma to separate two sentences. If you put they there, all this up to this is a sentence. It should be so this should be a fragment. So again, it should be an F and G would be wrong for that same reason. They would establish two sentences separated by a comma, so it should be who or whom. Is this a subject or object pronoun position? I think this is again subject. Who have long, they have long used the, that would work. So who should be there again, not whom. You don't have an object pronoun. We're not in the objective form there. The idea of produce us from names whom have long use. Yeah. You would have to say, that's a side note. They kind of give you the sort of structure here. I learned that Creole cooks, comma, I'm gonna give you a side note about the Creole cooks who blended French got the idea for you satisfy the native people of the Southern Union, and then this Creole cooks who, and then the native peoples of the United States, comma, who have long. You see that? So it's like a parallel structure, right? So it should be who as well there, based on the sentence structure and where it's located. Just checking that. Yeah, 42 is the J. Yeah. All right. 43. If the writer were to delete, alone use the powder of these not only for cooking but also medicinal purposes. If the writer were to delete from the preceding sentence the clause who blended French, Spanish, and African American traditions, the sentence would primarily lose. What does that do? Is that a statement that clarifies that what traditional practices the narrator learned from the Creole cooks? Is it an explanation for where the Creole cooks got the idea for using sassafras? Yeah, maybe. Let's see. In addition, I learned that the Creole cooks who blended French, Spanish, and African American traditions got the idea for use. Oh no, because the French, they said that they got the sassafras idea from the native peoples, but these guys were not the French, Spanish, and African American. So it wouldn't be B. Background information that suggests that Creole cook drew from various sources. I think this is definitely C. Because it didn't say what traditional practices they learned. It said what traditions they got it from. French, Spanish, and African American traditions are the traditions they got it from. It didn't say what practices they were, so it wouldn't be A. C works better. It's the background information that suggests the Creoles drew from various sources. They drew from French, Spanish, and African American tradition sources. And then D, a description indicates where the filet gumbo soup recipe originated. No, not necessarily. It just tells you more about where the Creole cooks got their sources, so that would be C. That was 43. Yes. Two more. 44, testing punctuation. In fact, the Choctaw people used to travel to the famous French market in New Orleans to sell the filet powder they made. Um, you don't need any punctuation to me. It wouldn't be semicolon. Yeah, it's definitely F. No punctuation needed. No stop, no pause, and no shift. It's just a continual thought. In fact, comma, the Choctaw people used to travel to the famous French market in New Orleans to sell the filet powder they made. They were selling the powder they made. Yeah, no need for punctuation. 44 is F. And 45. If the writer's goal here was to, wait, let's finish reading. It's comforting to know that my taste wasn't as odd as my childhood pals made it out to be. Next time I see them, I'll have to explain that I wasn't just eating sassafras leaves. I was tapping into time-honored wisdom about edible plants. If the writer's goal were here was to introduce readers to Louisiana Creole cooking and its special dishes, would this essay successfully accomplish that goal? Was it here? It was to introduce readers to Louisiana Creole cooking and its special dishes. Not really. This was mostly about sassafras. Even though it was part of the Creole cooking, it wasn't introducing the readers to Louisiana Creole cooking overall, right? And so it's C, right? It primarily focused on the memories of sassafras, not only the Creole style of cooking. It's definitely C. Okay, that does it for the English section. Hopefully this is very helpful to you. As you prepare for the ACT, as you learn from the mistakes you may have made when you took this test. Um, you guys, I think, received some kind of information about your right and wrong answers. Um, so hopefully this helps to clarify a little bit better. Obviously, if you need more instruction and more assistance, feel free to reach out to us at actprepchicago@yahoo.com or 773-474-2540. Mr. Glenn signing off, and hope I was of help to you. Good luck in your future admissions, and good luck in your future ACT testing. That's a better way.